Hey, Church Home, welcome to week 2 of the 6-week journey. And I must admit, in preparation for the 6-week journey and setting out these outlines, this has to be the week I think I'm most excited about. I don't know if
I have a different one.
Which one is yours?
I'll wait and tell you when we get there.
Well, the suspense is killing me.
Yeah.
This is my favorite. It's week 2, and we're talking about Abram, who God later named Abraham. And one of the reasons I love Abraham is because of my dad. It was definitely one of his favorite characters in all of Scripture, of course, other than Jesus. And Abraham is such a beautiful picture, maybe the clearest we have in the Old Testament, of truly trusting God. We get in Abraham a foretaste thousands of years before Jesus. Before Jesus, God puts on skin and bone, moves into the neighborhood, and pays the ultimate price for sin, error, and wrong. There is this man way, way back who had the same kind of faith that we're called upon to have today, to trust God to make you right with God, to give you a right relationship with God, not according to deeds, accolades, moral attributes, or excellence. Because, of course, Abraham's whole relationship with God was based on faith because it was hundreds of years even before the law was actually written.
Yeah, so he didn't even know what were the right things to do or to not do. But Abraham was the first man who it was declared over that Abraham believed God and God declared him righteous. And then we see throughout that New Testament that is described over and over again that here was this man who believed God. And what did he do to believe God? He simply followed God and said yes to whatever God had for him.
And it's kind of overwhelming, all the content and the narrative and the story. And so let me just say, before we even say one more word on this week 2 video, that you got to dig in for yourself, because I think you're going to find so much of yourself in Abram becoming Abraham and following God. For instance, in Genesis 12, it says that Abraham went out to a land that God said, go to a land that I will show you. Later, I think it says in Romans.
In Hebrews.
Hebrews 11:8. Yes, I knew that. The chapter we're studying.
It says that Abraham didn't know.
He didn't know where he was going.
Where he was going. And I think about...
I stole your punchline.
Yeah, no, I think I stole it from you. But I think about Jesus when he called his disciples. He said, follow me. And they didn't know where they were going with Jesus. It was just a, hey, follow me. And I think about our life of faith and how often Jesus asks us to just follow him. And we don't always know where we're going. And sometimes maybe we need to forgive somebody, or God asks us to move, or God asks us to do things, and we don't know what the end result is going to be, but yet it is a life of faith.
And Jesus does bring comfort, and he does bring care, and he is the good shepherd, and he is so kind and gracious. But Jesus intends to lead us on an adventure. A true adventure. And it actually at times kind of wrecks our idea of comfort, convenience. And I think one of the things we have to address even in this week is this illusion of control, feeling like I'm in control of my life. Jesus says if you let go of your life, if you lose your life, you'll end up finding it. And so this adventure of following Jesus,
it's so real.
You let go of control. And Abraham is this extraordinary example thousands of years before Jesus of relinquishing control and starting to move when you don't even know where you're going. And I think that has a lot to do when it comes to trusting Jesus. And there may be people watching right now, you're trying to make a major decision or even a little decision, and you're like, well, I need to know everything before I
need to know Z before I start A.
Right.
And that's not the God we serve. It says the steps of a righteous man are ordered of the Lord.
That's right.
Not the life. He doesn't give us the whole life plan. He gives us steps. But that's why it's a life of faith.
Completely.
Because we don't always know what the next steps are going to be. But I love in Genesis 15, Abraham goes from an unknown to God gives him a glimpse of what his life is going to look like.
Yeah, and maybe we've done this a little out of order. We're just excited. But there's this in Genesis 12, which we just spoke to, but later in Genesis 15, there's this incredible, magnanimous moment. God being so generous and gracious. He says in Genesis 15, Abram, I want you to come outside of your tent. And of course, inside that tent, Abram was complaining, because God had not done what Abram thought he should do on his time frame.
Yep.
You told me you were going to make me a great nation. You told me you were going to do all these things with my life. What's going on? He's in this small space of complaint, this small space of grumbling. God, where are you? What's going on? If that is not relatable, I don't know what is. Those small moments where we get narrow-minded, we get obsessive, and we focus on the things we don't have, or God said this and he hasn't done that. What's going on? And there's this story, I just love it. I feel like preaching, but it says that God brought Abram. Abram didn't bring himself, and God is so faithful. We can't get out of our narrow-mindedness, our micro-vision. God brings us out, and he says, it's this famous portion of Scripture. He says, Abram, can you count the stars? Can you count the stars? And Abram's response is, I can't. And he says, so shall your descendants be. I'm going to work a miracle in your life. And I think it's Genesis 15 and verse 6. It says, and Abraham accepted this. He simply received it. And that's faith, accepting who God is and that what God says is true. He accepts it. And it says this, it was accounted to him for righteousness, which of course, that's faith. It's simply accepting. For God so loved the world that whosoever believes in him, he so loved the world, he gave himself, his only begotten son. Faith is to receive. It's to accept. And Abram accepted that God would make him a great nation. And it says in Genesis 15:6, and it was accounted to him for righteousness. And that is maybe the most important thing we can say about Abraham's life. He is a foretaste. He is the prequel. He is the initial portrait and picture of being made right in his relationship with God, not by deeds, not by his moral conduct, again, reiterating what we reiterated a moment ago, or by his excellent behavior, but by accepting God, accepting that God is real, big, and good, and he was made right with God. By simply accepting Jesus, we have a right relationship with God forever and ever. We know what it's like when a relationship is not right? And we know what that's like.
That?
No, periodically in marriage, we know what that's like. But with God, because of Jesus, we're constantly in right relationship. Now, from that standing with God, let's be dreamers.
Yeah, I love that, because it was in that moment of God declaring Abraham righteous that God gave Abraham a dream.
That's right.
And the dream was bigger than himself, right? He had to take him out of his tent. His dream was bigger than his own little tent in his own little world. It was actually to affect other people. And I believe for all of us, out of that place of God making us righteous, God also gives us a dream. And that dream is beyond us being happy and successful and fulfilled. It is so that other people can also know Jesus. And so maybe you find yourself in that place of complaining, in that small place.
Totally.
I believe that this week, as you read the story of Abraham, that God is going to take you out of your tent and he's going to give you a dream that's bigger than yourself, and that is to help other people.